Hey, if you've ever wondered what it would be like to be a social media influencer with 1 million followers, well, guess what? There's a new HBO documentary showing us what that life could look like. Take a peek.
So exhausting. It's very competitive. I take like anti-anxiety pills, but I mean, who doesn't?
Will their life change for the better?
We've got a lot of followers, so I'm getting some free stuff.
Or are there unintended consequences for the worse?
I want to be famous for being me.
You want to be famous for being you?
People take Instagram too seriously.
I love it, the way it was posed. You want to be famous for being you? Joining us now is veteran journalist and director of Fake Famous, Nick Bilton, and one of the famous influencers featured in the film, Wiley Heiner. Thanks for being with us, guys. All right.
Thank you.
Well, let me start with you. Talk to us about the whole idea. I mean, how has this changed your life?
For me?
Yeah.
You know, it's been pretty crazy. I feel like I'm living in sort of a simulation right now, and watching yourself on camera is definitely the most traumatizing part of the whole experience.
Yeah. Nick, I want to ask you this because I've never really understood the influencer culture, right? So why did you feel there was a need to create this kind of social media experiment?
Well, I've been writing about technology and social media for about 15, 20 years or so, which really makes me feel old actually saying that out loud. But I wrote the book on Twitter, and I have been looking at these studies where over periods of time, they've been asking people, what do you want to be when you grow up? Kids. And it used to be, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a journalist. Now, 87% of kids say they want to be a famous influencer.
87%?
87%. In the United States. In China, it's, I want to be an astronaut. So it's definitely a cultural thing that's happening here. But people are obsessed with fame. And when you look at the numbers of influencers, quote unquote influencers on social media, there are hundreds of millions of them. And the numbers just don't add up. It's impossible for there to be hundreds of millions of famous people.
Yeah.
Hence the social experiment.
Let's talk about those numbers for just a second. The film follows 3 young adults from Los Angeles. How much money is involved in making their lives Insta-famous, Insta-worthy?
It's crazy.
We didn't actually spend that much money in the film. It looks like we did, you know, constantly buying bots and, you know, fake likes and fake comments and things like that. But I spent more money experimenting. So like with Wiley's account, I would buy him, you know, 100 bots here, 1,000 there, 10,000 here to see which ones worked and which ones didn't. And I think you could probably pull it off for a couple of $1,000s, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading some articles about this, talking about, like, you know, Wiley, you go get a haircut, right? Then you have to do this crazy photo shoot to make sure that it looks like it's the best. So you went from having, what, like 1,000+ followers to what?
I think like 25,000 or plus followers. It's pretty wild.
So why did you want to participate in this yourself? What was the most surprising thing you learned from it?
You know, it sort of just fell into my lap, which was great. And I'm so fortunate that it happened that way. And I'm so glad I did it. But it was so stranger to me. I didn't, you know, I'm not an actor, and it was a pretty different experience, but I loved it. And I'd say the craziest thing I learned is there's that one scene in the documentary where she goes on a photo shoot bus tour, and then they fly back. And I thought that was just the craziest part of the whole thing, honestly.
Nick, I want to get back to something you said. For a few $1,000s, couple $1,000s, you can get a ton of followers. Like, how many are you talking about? And are people finding that this is the way to get famous, to buy their way to it?
Well, with Dominique, who was another subject in the film, we got her to 350,000 followers, just buying fake accounts and fake interactions.
How much did that cost you?
About the same. You know,
really?
There's different services. You know, there's some services where you pay, you know, you can pay $100 and you get 10,000 bots, and there's others you get 100,000.
But Nick,
where it changes is the quality of the bots.
What do you want people to walk away from when they watch this, right? Because I want people to make sure that it's very clear, this is not fame. What you're doing is so, I mean, I know the fake is in the title, but even when you look at Instagram on the face value, it's a highlight reel of people's lives. It is not real.
It's not even a real highlight reel of their lives. It is a highly curated, even for people who don't fake photos like we did in the film, you're not showing you waking up in the morning and and you feel tired and haggard. You're not showing you arguing with your spouse or your kids or whatever it is. You're just showing this curated version of your life that is completely not real. And I think the main takeaway for me is that, 87% of kids want to be influencers because they think that's the quickest way to being famous.
Yeah.
And what we all realized in the film is the whole concept of influencing is to make you feel worse about your life. It's to say, look at this life I live.
Yes. Look how great I am.
I'm on vacation. I have these free things. You don't. And if you want, you can buy them, and that's it. That's really what
it's a manipulation. It's a manipulation.
But Wiley, is it easy to get caught up in it? Is it easy to start feeling like, hey, it is kind of real because look at my numbers. This is me. But it's not. But in your head, and you see the results of it, you kind of feel like you earned it in some weird way.
Of course, and you see in the documentary, there's a scene where I sort of panic because I get called out for having fake followers and things like that. But even though I knew they were fake the whole time, I was still just as affected, thinking that there were at that time, 12,000 people just looking at me randomly, even though I knew they were bots.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, Nick. You know this too, because I get those emails all the time of, would you like to grow your followers to 100,000 if you pay us this much money, or can we pay you to put ads on your website and be an influencer? I mean, the term influencer just is nonsense to me, and I hope that young people watch this and realize it.
I completely agree. I think at the end of the day too, the one thing I came to realize is that the companies, the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the Twitters of the world, they are the ones they have made our lives into a video game. And the leaderboard for the video game is who has the most number of likes and the most number of followers and things like that on social media. And I think it's frankly diabolical the way that they manipulate people to interact with their platforms.
Diabolical is a strong word too, because you think about it, teenagers these days are looking, and adults are looking at their Instagram being like, oh my gosh, this didn't do well, and then then it spirals out, right? And you go into this anxiety. I want to bring in the team here because I see Marisol raising her hand. I know Marisol has a question for you guys.
I did. Just, first of all, congratulations on giving voice to this movement. And I've often wondered, because I have 2 children, and when they said to me, when I grow up, I want to play for professional football, I was like, thank God they didn't say they wanted to become an influencer. But I just wonder, with other, I don't want to call this a trend or these movements, is there a tipping point? Will there be a time when this is no longer a thing? We all joke about, remember when journalism and being a journalist was like, that was the intrepid thing to do, and now people are like, oh, journalists, what's that? It's like a dying breed. So I wonder, will the influencer ever become extinct? Will this idea of becoming TikTok famous or buying followers, will that ever drop off in your opinion, since you were so entrenched in it?
I think that when you look at the history of social media on the internet, there's the very first social website was called The Well. It was 30 years ago. It was a messaging board. It used to be scientists and theologians and researchers that went on there. And there was a moment people would talk about really important things. And there was a moment where they allowed people to be anonymous on The Well. And it quickly spiraled into pure chaos. And they had to shut it down. And every single iteration of social media has had this hype and then this fall. And I believe that eventually this stuff will all die. I just don't see it being around forever.
Well, maybe the companies will... I was going to say step in and get rid of the bots, right? Make it so that those can't.
I mean, they could, but
falsify.
I think that the larger problem is, and we talk about this in the film, by and large, social media has helped see the rise in depression, teen suicide, all of these things. Yes. And I just think that everyone feels bad as a result of using it eventually, and I think that will be its demise.
I mean, remember MySpace?
Yeah,
Way back when?
Vaguely.
All of it. Even Facebook. Facebook's numbers, they're all going to they manipulate you, and the only way to win in that manipulation is not to interact with it. Yep. And I think that's why you see this fall off eventually of people stopping to use these platforms.
Nick, Wiley, thank you. I love that you made this documentary. I think it is fascinating, and we could do a whole hour-long special on this. Thank you for being here.
We'll be sure to like you, Wiley. We'll be sure to.
Good, I'll follow you back. Yeah.
Okay.
Gosh, the world goes round and round.
Fake Famous can now be streamed on HBO and HBO Max.